The Imprisoned Princess, written and narrated by Wade Rich.
There once was a beautiful young girl who lived in a castle. Her parents were the king and queen, her brother and sister the prince and princess. Yet despite being born into a royal family, she was not treated like a princess at all. Instead, she was a prisoner. She had spent her entire life locked in her room high in one of the castle towers. What confused her most was that she didn't know why. She couldn't recall having done anything wrong. There was no defining event that had started it all. It was simply the way it was. And so she accepted her imprisonment and that there was no way out. In spite of this, she was well cared for. She was fed, clothed, and given anything she needed. But unlike her siblings, she wasn't free to run, play, and be happy as they were. In addition, there were many other unpleasant aspects of her imprisonment, such as being brought food she didn't like and clothing she didn't want to wear. Her bed was uncomfortable and the room was either too hot or too cold. Nothing ever seemed right. Yet, she accepted that these things were simply part of it. Many times she got upset and cried, but in the end realized nothing was going to change. Therefore, she would simply accept her fate. She had no choice and no control. But there was something else that wounded her even more deeply. Often, her parents came to the heavy wooden door of her room. She could hear what sounded like the shouting of angry, pain-filled words. She would curl up in the corner and cry, trying hard not to listen. Why? She thought to herself. Why is this happening to me? What makes me so bad? The rejection she felt was so painful that she tried to ignore what was happening outside her room, the things she was missing out on. She worked hard to see herself as different from everyone else, and it hurt less to simply be content as a prisoner. One day, however, she made the terrible mistake of looking out her window, and there she saw her family gathered below. It was a beautiful day, and they, along with many others, were enjoying their springtime celebration. They were laughing and playing games, surrounded by music and food, but most of all, they were hugging one another and sharing the kind of love and praise she had never known. In that moment, something deep within her broke. It hurt so badly that she thought she might faint. Then she heard a voice within her that said she could no longer remain a prisoner. It was as though she realized she was suffocating and had to find air somehow, some way. For the first time, her heart burst from its prison and cried out for freedom. She ran to the door and began pounding on it, screaming for help. "Help me! Please, please let me out! I promise I'll do anything! Please free me, somebody!" She sank to the floor, crying, and then whimpered, "Please, somebody, love me." After crying for several minutes, she heard something outside her room. It sounded like hurried footsteps. Then came the muffled voices of her parents, brother and sister. They were saying something, but as usual, she couldn't understand them. Could it be possible that they are coming to free me? She wondered. No, how could it be? They've never let me out before. Why would they do so now? But something was different. Her heart felt different. It was saying something she didn't quite understand, but what she heard was, "Listen to them differently." "Okay," she thought bravely. I'll try that. I'll listen differently. She put her ear to the door and cried, What? What did you say? Their words were difficult to understand, but it sounded as though they said, Please come out. We miss you. What did they mean by come out? It didn't make any sense. She screamed back, Please help me. Please open the door. I want to come out. There was a pause, and then the words she heard filled her heart with fear. We can't. What? You can't? What does that mean? Why? Why can't you? She thought and then sobbed. Oh, why? Why won't you let me out? Am I that bad or evil that you must keep me caged? She sank to the floor with her back against the door, sobbing in renewed heartbreak. Then, just as she began to sink into despair, her sobs had almost drowned out the voices of her family when she heard, You have the key. We can't open it because you have the key. Their words seemed strange at first, and she didn't know what to think. In the past, she'd only known what she heard through the door to be painful words of rejection, but the new voice inside gave her the courage to think about it, her heart still crying out that it was willing to do anything to be free. So, as she let their words in, she heard a voice inside saying, Look in your hand. Despite it sounding like an odd request, she looked down as her fingers slowly opened. She caught her breath as she saw there in her palm lay a beautiful thing made of gold. What was so odd was that she realized she's always had it. How strange to find something you've always had, yet never thought about. She stared at its beauty, mesmerized. It was the first time she'd ever seen it for what it was, a key. She looked up at the door and noticed a keyhole. It surprised her at first. How had she not seen it before? But there it was, a lock just below the handle. In a daze, she raised her key to the lock. With little effort, she slid it into the keyhole and turned. A clear clicking sound echoed. From the other side, she heard her family shouting in astonished excitement, She's doing it! She's unlocking it! She reached for the handle, turned it, and the door swung open. Her family came rushing in, and her parents swept her into their arms, hugging and rocking her. Oh, my sweet princess, her father cried. How long we've waited for you. How much we've missed you. Thank you for letting us in. Thank you so much. Her mother held her tightly, stroking her hair without the words to express her love. Her brother and sister surrounded her, their voices alight with joy. Sweetheart, her father said, his voice full of emotion, we've hoped for this day for so long. So many times we've stood at your door, pleading, begging, and crying for you to let us in. She turned and looked back at the open door. She was amazed to see there was no lock on the outside, not even a handle. Both were on the inside. They had always been on the inside. This realization turned her mind upside down and inside out. It seemed impossible. How could that be? She thought. And yet it was the only thing that made sense. For the first time in her life, everything finally made sense. She thought back to all the times she'd shut herself away, convinced it had somehow been forced upon her. But now she could see it clearly. It was her. She had locked herself in. She had condemned herself. She had judged herself. The realization washed over her in a wave of freedom unlike anything she'd ever experienced. The power to free herself had always been her own. Her parents watched closely as she re-envisioned her entire existence. They could see her mind spinning with this new perspective. Then, for a moment, she felt shame for her foolishness threatened to steal her newfound freedom when her mother's voice interrupted her thoughts. "You know, we have them too," Mother said tenderly. She opened her hand to reveal a similar key. The princess gasped in surprise. Mother smiled and continued, "And there have been times when we've also felt the need to lock the love of others out." Father nodded and added, "So you're not alone. We want you to understand that no one but you can stop yourself from accepting love. You have always been and always will be loved. You are our princess. Nothing can or will ever change that. And even if there are moments when we lock ourselves away from you," he paused, his tone softening, "it will never be because you aren't deserving of love or acceptance. It will only be because we are afraid that we are not." Mother smiled, looking her daughter in the eyes, and said, "Thank you for letting us in. We are truly privileged to be connected with your precious, beautiful soul." She and Father hugged their little princess once more. After that miraculous day, the princess still occasionally ran to her room and locked herself in. But never again did she fail to realize that the power to set herself free was always hers. Over time, she learned that the only defining line between being a prisoner and a princess was how she felt about herself. That no one and nothing outside of her could tell her who she was. She alone held that power of choice. And she realized that to be sovereign was not just the right of some king or queen in a place of power, but that every single person has that built right into their soul, because they alone get to choose whether they are a prisoner or a princess.